The black car, shuddering and making strange noises, stopped. Frustrated, Anne, who was sitting behind the wheel, got out of the car and opened the hood. She looked under the hood and immediately realized that she would not be able to fix it herself. There was acrid vapor coming from the heated engine from the drops of liquid that dripped on it from one of the tubes. Anne was alone in a strange city without a car. Other people would have panicked, but Anne wasn't even nervous. She had encountered even worse problems during her career as a businesswoman. The city was big enough, and the woman did not doubt that her car would be repaired soon. Anne set up a warning triangle on the road. Then she took her smartphone, called for a tow truck, and found the nearest car service with good reviews where her car was immediately delivered. She was ready to wait for a long time, but her car was quickly delivered to the service. After a quick check of the faulty car, it turned out that the breakdown was not so bad. After assessing the car's breakdown, the mechanic admitted that it would not be possible to repair the car right away. You know, all of our mechanics are busy right now. As soon as someone is available, they'll take care of your car. You can wait in the lounge and have a cup of tea or coffee. Or you can give me your phone number, and when the work is done, I'll call you, the car service worker said. Anne chose the second option. She was used to working almost without pauses and decided to take advantage of the rare opportunity when she was in no hurry and could have a break. She had read somewhere that whatever happens in life should be used to the maximum, and obstacles should be taken as a hint from fate. It was time to stop and think about where to go next. So now she was trying to find the bright side of the unexpected situation and the unexpected costs of repairs. Anne decided to allow herself to walk around the city. It was a beautiful spring weather outside, and it helped her to be in a positive mood. The woman enjoyed strolling down the local pedestrian street, which had expensive stores with big brand names and souvenir shops. The city was nothing like a capital full of luxury, but it had its own charm. The city seemed quiet and peaceful, as if time had stopped. Anne was glad that her faulty car gave her the opportunity to take a walk and relax her soul instead of driving down the highway to come to an empty house where no one was waiting for her. Tired of the bustle of the local main street, Anne turned down one of the adjoining streets. It was calmer here. The sight of the old houses made her feel like she was in the last century. She could not believe that civilization was buzzing and raging nearby. However, the woman noticed that the impact of the consumer society got here as well. Many buildings had grocery stores on the first floors, and in one of the buildings, Anne saw a sign saying hairdresser. She used to get her hair cut in the same beauty salon and by the same hairdresser for ages. But now, she gave in to the spontaneous urge to go to a provincial hairdresser's shop. Later, she could not understand what was more important to her at that moment, to get her hair done or to rest her tired feet. Anyway, Anne pulled the door open, stepped over the threshold, and entered a small room. There were only 2 seats inside. A young girl was sitting in one of the seats. A middle-aged woman was styling a client's hair. The hairdresser noticed the new visitor and asked affably, "Good afternoon. May I help you? Haircut, coloring, manicure, pedicure?" Anne shrugged uncertainly and said, "I would like just a trim." The hairdresser nodded and, turning to someone behind the curtain, called out, "Julian, there's a client for you." Anne thought that some glamorous young guy with colorful hair wearing an unusual outfit was about to show up. But she was surprised, for her expectations were not met. Julian was a pleasant, smiling man. He might have been her age or even a little older. He greeted her politely and asked her what she wanted. He did not insist on a drastic change in her image, as her regular hairdresser did, and made her feel really happy. Julian had golden hands. Anne completely relaxed as if she got a massage. Paying a modest fee, according to the price list, Anne left the hairdresser a generous tip. In return, Julian handed the woman his business card. "I hope to see you again. If you wish, you can call and make an appointment at any convenient time, or you can call the hairdresser to your home or office if necessary." Anne smiled at the man she really liked, but shook her head negatively. "Alas, I'm just passing through. I don't think you can come to my house 500 kilometers away." The man gallantly kissed the woman's hand and said a phrase that made Anne's heart beat faster. "For you, I'm ready to go anywhere. Actually, would you like me to show you our city?" Anne tried to appeal to the voice of reason and refuse, saying that the man was actually at work, but another hairdresser unexpectedly supported him. "Great idea, Julian. Our city deserves to be better known. There are not many clients today. Go, I can handle it here." There was no news from the car service. Anne could not find the strength to refuse the unexpected offer of a handsome city tour guide. She convinced herself that it would be an informative walk. Now she would get valuable information about the city where she planned to open a branch of her company someday. While walking, Julian showed politeness, extraordinary erudition, and a sense of humor, and won Anne's heart. The call from the car service came late in the evening, when the woman did not want to part with the charming and cheerful guide. While she was talking on the phone, Julian whispered in her ear, "Anne, you shouldn't drive late at night. It's not safe. You can stay at my place. You need to get some rest, and in the morning, I'll make you breakfast, and then you can go home. Don't worry, I won't harass you, though it's going to be extremely difficult for me to control myself. I really like you." The unexpected confession made the woman blush. She was both pleased and embarrassed when she told the car service worker that she would pick up the car the next morning. Overnight, Anne completely fell in love with Julian, and when she said he was ready to go to the capital with her, she couldn't refuse. The hairdresser took a week off and went with her beloved to her city. It was one of the most magical periods in Anne's life. During this time, she felt loved and needed. She was not surprised when Julian proposed to her on their last evening together. Anne realized it would be an unequal marriage, but she had learned not to pay any attention to what people think. The wealthy businesswoman had no family or close friends who could dissuade her from a hasty marriage. Besides, she believed that she had finally met the man she would live with for the rest of her life. Julian knew how to calm her down, knew how to help her relax and relieve stress, so Anne was completely in his power. Just 2 months after they met, Anne and Julian got married. Julian moved to Anne's house in the capital, but he couldn't find a job. He was not interested in working in the hairdressing salons located in the suburbs, and he lacked the skills and knowledge to work in luxury salons downtown. Anne was worried that her husband was unemployed, but her material well-being allowed her to take care of all of her husband's expenses. While Anne was trying to keep the family prosperous and kept going on business trips, expanding the network of branches and the range of products, Julian didn't care about anything. He didn't want to get a job again and lived carelessly at his wife's expense. The only thing he didn't like was that his wife was in no hurry to give him expensive presents. Yes, she bought him a luxury watch, a phone, and a car. But it was not enough. His requests were constantly growing. He liked to pick up young girls in mall cafes, and for that, he needed money all the time. Especially when Julian met charming Tiffany. The girl trusted the talkative and polite man and agreed to go to his place. The relationship with Tiffany was proving like a challenge for Julian. He was drawn to the girl, and soon he began to take money without asking Anne to buy expensive presents for his mistress. Tiffany was a student and lived in a college dorm. They met secretly, and not so often. Julian followed all the precautions and rented one-night apartments, but that wasn't enough for him. He had married Anne just to get out of the small town and move to the capital, and now he wanted to get rid of his wife and live in her spacious, modern house with Tiffany, or with any other young beauty. It didn't really matter. Tiffany seemed to be right for Julian for now. She wasn't capricious. When Anne was away on business trips, they never felt ashamed to spend the night at her house. Julian naively assumed that Anne didn't know he was cheating, and he wanted to find some compromising information on his wife. He hoped to force her to sponsor his careless life, or to get a divorce, but to get her property somehow. His wife kept Julian out of her business, and one day he decided to sneak a peek at the business papers she left in the safe. Anne had given him the code to lock herself, and as he went through the financial papers, he came across his wife's personal notebook. It seemed to be a treasure. The first page contained a confession written in Anne's neat handwriting. I finished off my husband Derek on September 20th. He begged for mercy, and he asked to call a doctor, but I was ruthless. After everything he had done to me, there could be no mercy. I had to spend a long time in the hospital because of him. I will never get pregnant and have a baby because of Derek. He should be punished for that. Shouldn't he? I did that because only I had the right to punish that bastard. Julian was so excited that he didn't even read any further. He hid the notebook he found and waited impatiently for his wife to come back. Barely containing his emotions, he wanted to have a conversation after dinner that would give him access to his wife's wealth. But Anne beat him to it and began the conversation first. Julian, I've known for a long time that you're cheating on me. You know, it's disgusting. Especially the fact that you take your pretty mistress to my house. So, darling, pack up your bags and get out of here. I'll take care of the divorce papers. The man was exulting, and he felt his superiority answering, "Don't get your hopes up, sweetheart." Anne was surprised at her husband's reaction. "Do you really think that I will keep supporting you and giving you money to spend on your mistress?" Julian sensed a moment of his triumph and grinned. "Anne, Don't be stupid. I know your worst kept secret. So if you want me to keep your secret, you will support not only me, but also my mistress. Or we could live together, the three of us. It's better than a prison cell anyway. Anne frowned. What secret are you talking about? The man mocked his spouse, anticipating how she would beg him to keep her secret, how she would try to buy his silence. You know, the judge will probably consider the bullying of Derek of you as a mitigating factor. However, your confession about Derek's fate will still send you to prison. In response to her husband's pathetic attempt to scare her, Anne suddenly laughed. She laughed so hard that she even had to wipe away her tears. Barely calmed down, the woman told him, "Get out now. I'll pack your bags and send them to your town with a driver. And you can publish my attempt to write a story in the detective genre right now." That's it. Get out. Julian realized that he had never read his wife's notes further. He tried to turn it into a joke, but Anne called the security guys from her company. Under the attentive gaze of the tough guys, Julian packed his belongings and left Anne's house. Soon, the woman was single again. She decided that she would never again let such worthless men into her life who wanted to live at her expense. Dear viewers, thanks for watching this video. Share your impressions in the comment section. If you enjoy what we do, please subscribe to the channel, like, and watch our other videos.
Alright, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. "I will do my best." Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. "Did you not hear what I said?" "I'm sorry." I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick! What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." Mike, what have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here." "He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident, especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it." Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. "Do you two know each other?" "Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, 'I'm moving to the sales department soon.' If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it." On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. "Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived." I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. "They look good." "What are you talking about?" "These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one?" As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself. This could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. "Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay?" I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. "Yes, I'm inviting my father." "That's great. I might invite my parents too." I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.